tickets available in the description. See you soon, cowboy. At the time of writing this video, I'm currently 34 years old. I feel like my age is pretty important in the greater scheme of what I want to talk about today, and at the risk of a bunch of you youngsters calling me Unk in the comments, I'm going to fixate on it quite a bit throughout what I have to say. My name is Bill, I'm 34 years old, and I'm a full-time rapper. Now, I didn't start making music at 34 years old, far from it. I made my first beat at 13, wrote my first song at 14, and recorded my first very bad demo at 15. I've been releasing music online in some capacity for over half of my life, which feels weird to say, but it's true. One common misconception about being a professional musician is that there's always this overnight success story, like a long period of grinding and releasing music without an audience whatsoever, then like some guy in a suit discovers you or you have a song blow up on TikTok or something. And while yes, that does happen, almost none of the musicians that I know personally have had that happen to them. I released my first mixtape, Ramona, back in 2014. I had developed a small audience on Tumblr and Bandcamp at the time, and I was really excited when it got like 400 downloads on the first day. I actually remember calling my mom and telling her that I was probably going to be able to quit my job, which was very inaccurate, but it still felt amazing. For the first time in my life, I felt like there was something there, a validation for all those years I had spent finding my sound and getting better at songwriting. There was forward momentum, even if it was fleeting, and that was beautiful. I was 23 years old. I was living in a shared apartment at the time, about 2 hours from my hometown, but one of my roommates had just had a baby and needed to move out. The lease was ending, I was working a minimum wage job and making little to no money from music at all, so I decided to move back in with my parents for a while. During this time period, I landed a job running sound for weddings and events in Charleston. It didn't pay much, but it gave me a lot of free time to work on music. It was during this time that I made my second mixtape, Resin. When Resin came out, it got 1,000 downloads on its first day on Bandcamp. The downloads were free, I didn't make any money, but it performed well, more than double the downloads of my first mixtape. I felt like I was on top of the world, like sure I couldn't afford health insurance, but a bunch of strangers on the internet were telling me that I rhymed words good. I'll take it. I was 24 years old. I was riding the high highs of being an obscure internet rapper. Random niche podcasts would occasionally hit me up to talk about 90s anime or like my favorite weed strain or whatever. I got recognized like twice by dudes who were coincidentally both wearing tie-dye bucket hats, and boy, you couldn't tell me nothing at the time. I moved into a house not too far from my parents' place with a few roommates. We spent probably too much of our time smoking weed and not enough time growing up, but I wouldn't trade those years for the world. I was broke as hell, with no degree, and a silly little rap thing. I was 25 years old. So, full disclosure, 26 is where things started to get a little sad for me. Most of my friends and roommates had moved out, moved away, got jobs, started families, finished getting their masters. All those talks about doing all the things we were gonna do and get famous for started turning into talks about, oh, this place gives me 3 weeks PTO. Looks like I can still go to the river house twice a year. I started becoming deeply insecure because I was putting so much work into a passion of mine instead of getting my life together. And I didn't have anything to show for it at all. It felt like the party was ending and all I knew how to do was dance. Like, could I even dance? Was my incredibly small fan base just a fluke, dumb luck? Was I even worth anything as a rapper? More importantly, was I even worth anything as a person? I felt like a failure. I released a mixtape that I worked pretty hard on called Drop Season. Only 300 downloads on his first day this time. Now, I'm not super good at math, but by my calculations, that's a 70% drop off from the previous mixtape. I remember my mom asking me about how it was doing, and I lied to her and said it was doing even better than the last one. I had made a silent decision in my head that I still haven't told anyone to this day, that I was quiet quitting my dream of making music. I was 26 years old. Shortly after this time period, I got a job as a server at a Ruby Tuesdays. Now, for the uninitiated, Ruby Tuesdays is a fast casual dining experience akin to an Applebee's or a Red Robin. It's got a vague southern thing going on, but for all intents and purposes, it's an Applebee's with a salad bar in it. The food is mediocre, it's kind of overpriced for what it is, but boy oh boy, that salad bar is banging. I'm not kidding, I stole so much salad during my time working there, which, sidebar, but this is important, they gave us a 50% discount on all the food, but I feel like they owed us a free salad. I don't know why I feel so strongly about this. Mr. Tuesday, if you're listening, give your employees a free salad every once in a while, please. Anyway, I started working there sometime in 2017. In an effort to save some money up, I moved back in with my parents and stayed in my childhood bedroom. My dad was going through some pretty bad health problems, so pretty much all of my time during the daylight hours was consumed with either helping him out around the house or waiting tables. I really didn't enjoy working at Ruby Tuesdays at first, but I eventually fell into a rhythm and was making a good bit of cash from tips. I've always felt like I'm pretty good at talking to strangers about nothing, and the actual pay was based pretty much on solely how good you are at doing that. With most of my time preoccupied with work and helping out my family, I think I only released like 2 songs that year, maybe. I started to develop a complicated relationship with music. I was really creatively unsatisfied. It felt like there was this hole that I usually filled with barfing all of my deepest insecurities and fears into lyrics, but instead I was just keeping them inside me, like almost wearing them on my sleeve. But I felt guilty if I tried to write, like I was moving backwards, that I wasn't growing up. It became this weird push and pull that just left me full of discontent. I feel like it really started to show. Like I was shorter with people, I would get really angry in traffic, I didn't enjoy a lot of things. After about a year of working there, I started getting back into playing fighting games in my spare time. I saw a trailer for a new Dragon Ball game called Dragon Ball FighterZ that was developed by Exociety. Now, if you don't follow fighting games, Exociety is known for making a lot of really good anime fighters, such as the Guilty Gear series, BlazBlue, Persona 4 Arena. There's way more, but all of those games are super gas. If you're not hip, definitely check them out. This wasn't just a normal anime game. This was a for the heads competitive fighting game that just happened to be a Dragon Ball game. I was immediately sold, and upon playing it, I was immediately addicted. This game was everything that I ever looked for in a game. It was gorgeous. Like, some frames just felt like they were ripped straight out from the show. The combat was simple enough to get into quickly, but complex enough that you never stop learning new cool stuff you could do. I was so hooked. However, I was faced with a problem. I was busy all the time. I worked 4 to 5 days a week, oftentimes double shifts. I was spending a lot of time with my dad, who I was worried was slowly dying, and I just didn't have any me time, almost ever. I would get home from my job at Ruby around midnight to 1 a.m. if I worked their night shift. So I decided, hey, I'm gonna make some me time. I started staying up every night playing Dragon Ball FighterZ online. I don't mean like every once in a while, I mean every night. I would go to sleep when I would see the sun coming up. I started falling into this insane sleep schedule. If I worked mornings, I would probably get around 3 to 4 hours of sleep on a good night, then roll out of bed, quickly shower, and go to work. I come back home exhausted, and every night I would say, I'm actually gonna get some sleep tonight, and then I wouldn't. I would get this sudden burst of energy and say, this is for me, and just keep playing all night. It sounds kind of weird saying it out loud, but it felt supernatural and normal at the time. If this wasn't bad enough, I was still living with my parents in rural South Carolina. The internet speed was atrocious. I would get so mad at the lag spikes, and then that would just turn into me getting mad at losing, and then that would just turn into me just being mad about life. I was just frustrated all the time. I remember I was on a date and my dad called me about a pipe that burst in the house and they needed me to come fix it. So I bailed and I was driving back home and I just started screaming in my car, like full volume anguish, just sobbing and gross snot. I screamed so hard that I went lightheaded. I had to look like an absolute psychopath. Like, luckily no one saw me that I know of, but it wasn't great. I remember this started spilling over into work. The longer I stayed at Ruby Tuesdays, the more I felt like my life was not going anywhere. I wasn't really making that much music at all. I felt trapped in the cycle of just having a job I didn't really like, but it was the beast I knew. I was worried that I was going to quit and then not be able to find a job that pays well in this shithole town. Like, I just felt stuck. I was sleep deprived all the time. I would just randomly feel lightheaded while doing normal tasks. I was weirdly emotional about things that didn't really make sense to be emotional about. The only time I actually felt awake was staring at my laptop screen at 4 a.m., trying not to drop a combo with 7 frames of delay. I'm pretty sure that's what hell is, what I just described. It's that. I remember I was serving this table one time, this sweet old couple, incredibly nice, and towards the end of their dinner, I came by and asked if they needed anything. And this lady just looks at me and she says, "What are you doing here?" And she asked it so casually, but it felt like time stopped when she asked. So I paused for a moment and I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" And she just, smiling, asked again, "What are you doing here?" And I look over at her husband and he's just smiling at me. And I think she put 2 and 2 together that her question was sending me into an existential crisis, because after a second or two, she says, "Well, you're just so charismatic and you have like a nice voice, like a radio voice. What are you doing waiting tables? You should be..." And she kind of just trailed off for a minute. And then she said, "Anywhere but here." So I just nodded and said, "Well, I'm working on it." And she smiled back at me. And I just went to the back of the walk-in cooler and started crying, like for a long time. Someone came and found me and saw me crying and was like, "Oh, what did she say to you to make you this upset, that old bitch?" You know? And I was just like, probably the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me. But yeah, that stuck with me. So a few months later, I started recording again. Just when I had time. I would record in my bedroom at my parents' place. I started writing again in the parking lot at work, like on breaks, like just before or after my shift. I started doing this thing where I would have to write a verse before I could leave the parking lot. And I started to feel a bit more like a person again. I was still on the craziest sleep schedule ever, but I was doing something. It felt like I was doing it less to impress other people and more for myself again. It felt like reclaiming a part of myself that I had grown sort of, I don't want to say embarrassed, but like embarrassed of, I guess. I was 27 years old. So a thing that I haven't really brought up yet was throughout this whole time, I was in this, well, still am, in this internet rap collective. We went by Exociety at first, and we called it EXO for short, but we eventually changed the name to Exociety. It was me and like 5 or 6 other people at the time. That was the original lineup. But my good friend Rav, who was in it, was also getting some similar attention as me online. Nothing crazy, but like, okay, he got like a Fantano text review. We had gotten the attention of some cool YouTubers like Matt Watson from Super Mega. That was cool. A bunch of like really big AMV channels were using our stuff in their videos, like anime centric meme pages, etc. And all of this stuff was happening while I was still working at Ruby Tuesday and not doing anything with music. Like he had a job too. It was very much still a side thing at this point, but all of a sudden I saw this really big uptick in fan interaction online. So in response to that, I started getting CDs of my mixtapes printed, like super small batch, maybe 100 to 200 max, and then shipping them out from my parents' house. And people were actually buying them, like they were selling out fairly quickly. And I remember thinking, damn, people still buy CDs? That's crazy. I remember my mom sitting down and helping me pack them. I had no idea what I was doing and was just learning as I went, but it was really fun. I was still very much working at Ruby Tuesday, and the more money I was making from slanging CDs and like the chump change I was getting from Spotify at the time, the more I fantasized about not just quitting my job, but like obnoxiously quitting my job. I would have dreams about telling off rude customers or like throwing mashed potatoes in their face or something and being like, "Fuck y'all, I'm out." This time period was actually really good for me because although I had to put up with annoying stuff at work, I would always smile when I was sweeping up my section at the end of the night because I knew that if I really wanted to, I could leave at any moment and it wouldn't be the end of the world for me. I finally felt like I had some agency, like real validation that my mom wouldn't be so worried about me, that I could actually save money without picking up even more shifts. I had peace of mind for the first time as an adult, like possibly ever, and that was beautiful. While all this was going on, I had started a podcast alongside Rav called We Don't Suck. It was very goofy, rarely super serious, and people seemed to really eat it up at the time. I had actually started only working weekends at Ruby around this time because I was making about as much money as I was making there from music. And I just wanted to full on quit, but I remember my dad saying something along the lines of, "You don't know how steady this music thing is, or if it could just go away." So I stayed there. It was around this time that Rav and I started working on a collaborative project called New Moon. A lot of it was just like, "Hey, I made this song, you want to be on it?" from both sides, and just sending tracks back and forth, and it became like a full-on tape. I remember I couldn't set up my speakers that I mix on at my parents' place because like noise, so I took them over to my friend's house and mixed it at his place. I remember one night staying up all night working on fine-tuning the mixes and stuff, and I saw the sun coming up out of the corner of my eye through the window, and I think I had this Pavlovian stress response to sunrises from all of those nights staying up trying to get my Z Broly combos just right. So normally when I would see the sun coming up, I would feel like, shit, I've been up all night, I need to go to sleep, and I would get really bad anxiety. But this time it was different. This time I was like, oh, the universe is telling me it's done now. So it's done. And it was done. I sent the record to Rav and he was just like, it's done. I drove to Bojangles and got a celebratory chicken biscuit. It was a real "we did it, Joe" moment. So a week or two later, we go to put the record out, and around this time was when YouTube premieres were first becoming a thing, and we used them for a few of our podcasts and stuff, but never for a record. And we didn't tell anyone we were putting a record out. We just said, big announcement on this date. And like, I didn't really know what to expect. I thought maybe like 100 people max would show up and it would be just one step closer to going full time with music or something like that. I had ordered more CDs than I had ever ordered before for this record. And I figured whatever we don't sell online, we could just keep, and just, you know, if we ever had a show or something, we could sell them there. About an hour before the record came out, I pinged our Discord server with a link to the premiere. It was just a big question mark for the thumbnail. No one had any idea what it was. I saw the reactions to the ping coming in real time, and I was like, whoa, what? There were hundreds and hundreds of reactions. I remember messaging Rav like, dude, this is like a thing. You can see how many people are actively waiting on YouTube premieres, and it was like 200 to 300 people just chilling in there talking in chat like an hour before it even started. It felt so surreal. I remember watching the timer count down to 0, and when it was revealed what it was, people started flipping out. It went from 300 people to 350, then 400, then 450, then 500. I didn't even know what to think at the time. It felt like I got flashbanged. Seeing this outpour of positivity honestly just kind of fixed me. It was exactly what I needed at the time. I was just sitting there looking at the screen with this big dumb smile, texting Rav like, we did it, dude. Like, we really did it. We posted the link to the CDs that I was worried that we had ordered too many of, and like a few hours later, it sold out. About a week later, I put in my 2 weeks at Ruby Tuesday. I was 28 years old. My last 2 weeks at Ruby Tuesday were amazing. Customers were rude to me, and I just smiled right back at them. I actually took my time cleaning my section at the end of the night instead of rushing through it. I stole from the salad bar like 5 times. What are they gonna do, fire me? I remember my last shift working there. It was a slow night, and I only had 2 tables at a time. It was that slow. My last 2 tables were very interesting though. One of them was a middle-aged man who was clearly there for construction work. He had some kind of high-vis type vest on, seemed normal. The other guy was a guy that I went to high school with. His name was Quinn. Now, Quinn had either just got married or was about to get married. I cannot remember which, but I hadn't seen him since I graduated, so it was nice to catch up with him and his wife or fiance. And we talked for a bit, and he looked good. He seemed happy. He asked me if I still made music. I said, yeah, I'm actually about to quit this job in like an hour to do music full time. And we kind of like laughed about it. And he said he always believed I could do it, which is really sweet because all the music I made in high school was really bad. But I believed him when he said that. He's a good guy. I hope he's doing well. I told him congrats on the marriage, and they left, leaving me with my last table. So, construction guy is chill, not very talkative, but he's low maintenance. We served an alcoholic beverage called the Ruby Relaxer, and he ordered a bunch of those. However, at the end of the night, he told me that I accidentally charged him for one too many Ruby Relaxers. He said, hey, gotta speak to a manager. And like, okay, the last thing I wanted to do in that moment was go grab a manager and it'd be like this whole thing for my last table, right? So I was so ready to leave. I was already planning what music I was gonna blare on my way out of the parking lot. Spoiler, it was Freddie Gibbs. I remember leaning in, making hard eye contact and just saying, man, I'm gonna level with you here. You're my last table ever. I am quitting. Completely unrelated to you. I pulled out my wallet and handed him $10 and said, the drinks are $7, here's 10 for you. He took the money, just nodded, and he said, I get it. And he paid. He left me a $30 tip on $50. And just like that, I was free. As I've grown older and done this for a living for some time now, I oftentimes think about where I would be if music never panned out as a career path. If I could go back in time and talk to my 26-year-old self, I feel like I would tell myself that being goal-oriented is good, but you shouldn't put so much of your self-worth on how your music is received. That you're more than a music machine. I would say that you don't need a singular defining trait that deems you worthy of acceptance or love. I would say that your day-to-day interactions with the people you care about most are far more important than leaving a legacy or being respected and argued about on the corners of music forums that no one really reads. I would say that you're okay just the way you are, and that the music you made while working at Ruby Tuesday is the same music that you made while doing music full time. None of this matters, baby boy. It's what you make it. Do things that make you feel happy. And that is beautiful. Oh yeah. And in about a year's time, you're going to want to play Dragon Ball FighterZ. Please do not do that. Just skip that arc. Thanks for listening.